So, welcome, and of course, we'll start with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And here we are. We need to actually go up a little bit. So I want to tell you that this is pretty challenging to our current sensibilities, because what it's essentially saying is that a woman, although you'll see how the rabbis limit it in some ways, the application of this law. So you might say that there's perhaps some progressive elements to this, but there's a balance. And of course, we're looking at a society that's so different from ours, and we sort of unfortunately tend to assume that all societies necessarily are exactly the same as our own, and of course they're not in some significant ways. And in this particular society, the men had perhaps a responsibility, especially the fact that they had to protect the women and the families, that they had that kind of responsibility, so that if a younger woman was in her house, in her father's jurisdiction, he had the right to overturn her or to annul a vow that she may have made if he felt that it might affect her negatively or him or the family negatively. He had 24 hours essentially in which to do this. It sounds like it, or perhaps just the same day up until now. We'll try and clarify that and see if the Torah clarifies that. And then if a woman was married, her husband essentially had the same right as her father. So we'll take a look at that. And so there's that difficulty, at least for our current sensibilities. But right now, let's just see if we can take on what's being said here. As you can see, there's tremendous amount of stuff here under the Torah Temimah. I mean, here's a page without any Torah text or Rashi on it at all. And just all the commentaries. This is simply about saying keeping your word. Lo yachel dvaro. You should not profane your words. So I think, let's see if we're here. Right. Okay, so here we are. I think we had started this yesterday. The isha ki tidor neder lashem, right? If a woman makes a vow before God, the asra isar bevet aviha bin ureha. And she, la asor isar is like to make a commitment. It's to bind herself, right? By taking a vow while she is in her father's household. And it goes on to say bin ureha, in her youth. And so the rabbis want to define exactly what that means by saying in her youth. Let's just check and see. Excuse me. All right, so here we are. Bevet aviha, in her father's house. And the Sifrei, which is a midrash, we've talked about the Sifrei, you've heard us talk about this before. It's a halachic midrash on Numbers and Deuteronomy. So it explains it as Birshut Aviha. It's talking about under her father's authority. Va'afilu eina beveito, and even if she is not actually physically in his house, because of course we could have looked at that as a literally, but it means as long as her father is still taking care of her, and that she's under his protection, and not just protection but care and responsibility. Bin ureha. There we go. Now we come to this word, in her youth. V'lo ktana. So this doesn't apply to a minor, v'lo bogeret, nor to an adult. So it's not to an adult woman, nor to a minor. Shehaktana. Why? Because regard to a minor, ein nidara neder, her vows do not count at all. What she vows is not a vow. V'habogeret, and regard to an adult woman, eina birshoto shel aviha, she no longer is considered to be under her father's authority. Lahafer nidareha, that is to say, regarding the ability to annul her vows. Ve'ezohi ketana. So he goes on to define a ketana, a minor. And this is based on Nida, the tractate Nida, page 45b. Give me one moment, please. Okay, 1 second, and I'll go on. So here we go. Amru Rabotenu, our sages said, but Yud Aleph Shana V'Yom Echad, if she's 11 years old and a day, Nidareha Nivdakin. If she makes a vow, she's examined regarding Im Yada L'Shem Mi Nidara, right? If she understood to before whom she made the vow. Or it possibly means, the purpose of the vow. She understands her vow. Ulashem mi hikdisha nidara. Sorry, mi hikdisha. And before whom she, and again, we've got this word kadosh here, right? To sanctify, right? To dedicate. Let's say that. She made this dedicated statement. Nidra neder. Then it's considered a valid vow. So we examine her, we ask her questions, and if we learn from having asked those questions that she totally understands what she was doing and what she was getting into, and the fact that she was doing it before God. So that's sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm doing a great job here. Keep going. All right. So this is 11 years old and a day. And if she's bat yud bet shana v'yom echad, however, if she's 12 years old and a day, einat tzricha lehibadek, it is no requirement to examine her. So essentially, this law is limited to 2 years, from the day she gets to 11 years and a day to her being 12 years and actually, I believe it's 6 months, 12 years and 6 months. But here it just is saying 12 years. So again, we're limiting the ability to do this to a situation where she is still under her father's authority, and at the same time, she has to understand what she's doing. If she doesn't, then it's not even considered a vow. Are there any questions about this right now? Or do you want me to plow on? Okay.
Hold on. I had to unmute. It just dawned on me. There is nothing to say the same thing about a young boy.
Correct.
Which is amazing, because you would think that would be a thing. But okay. But I'm just opening that up just for,
Right. So understand, of course, we're basically dealing with chapter headings. We're only sort of beginning to scratch the surface. Mm-hmm. So we know that a boy is considered an adult at 13 years and a day. So that's not going to count. And prior to that, there is no sort of middle. Before that, he's considered a minor.
Okay.
Now it's possible. Having said that,
yeah.
The one parallel that you might have, quite honestly, is when he reaches 12 years old. And it's possible that from 12 years to 13, if he makes a statement, he's examined. Okay, and I'm saying possible. That makes sense. Okay, well, hopefully. So, and understand, when it says 11 years and a day and 12 years, there are many other issues that have to go. It is not just a matter of how many years old. It also has to do with other signs of maturity, that go in. But at least for our purposes, I think this is, adding a tremendous amount to our understanding of this passage, and step at a time.
Rambam goes really into what is considered,
I'm sure.
Right.
Because essentially what the Rambam's doing is he's dealing with the Mishnah and the Talmud, which which go into deconstructing this stuff, this material.
Even more so. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievably. They're very rigorous. And even that's not the end of the matter. I mean, then you have all the commentaries on the Talmud, etc.
Correct.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. No. I think it's important. So let's keep going here. Vishama aviha et nidra. So if her father heard her vow, ve'esara asher asra al nafsha. And this commitment, this binding, the sense in which she has bound herself, right? Ve'hecherish aviha, and her father remained silent. He didn't say anything to her. Ve'kamu kol nidareha, all her vows shall be established. They are considered effective. V'chol isa asher asra al nafsha yakum, and regarding to any, again, we're talking about a sense in which she has bound herself. She's tied herself down, right? Tied herself down. They apply. So if she says she will not eat red meat on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she vows she won't do that, she has to do it. So let's see if there is Rashi on this. I do not see Rashi. Okay. So this is the thing. If her father withheld her on the day he heard it. So again, when it says day he heard it, does it mean up until nightfall? Does it mean a 24-hour period? That's not entirely clear, at least from the written text here. So if he does prevent her, kol nidareha ve'esareha, all her vows or the commitments which she has made on herself, lo yakum, will not be established. Vashem yislach la, and God will forgive her. Ki heini avia ota, for her father has prevented her. He's withheld her from doing this. And of course, I imagine you might be asking yourselves, why does God need to forgive her? And Rashi actually explains the situation where that might apply. But we'll see. Here we go. All right. So first of all, he wants to explain some of the language, okay, as well. And if her father prevented her, im mana ota min haneder, if he held her back, prevented her from her vow, klomar, that is to say, sheheferla, that he invalidated it. Okay, so it says, so this word heini, this root heini, this is the word Rashi's talking about here. Okay, hana'a zo, this type of withholding, and this is a misprint that is quite significant because it says ani yodea mahi, I understand what it is. That is a misprint. There's a yud missing here, and it should say eini yodea mahi. I don't really understand what it is. I don't understand what they mean by withholding. Keshehu omer, so when he says, when scripture says, ve'im bayom shamoa, when it says regarding a husband, on the day he hears, isha yani ota, and it uses this verb here, it says her husband will yani her, will prevent her, is the way we'll understand it, vehefer, and he annuls the vow, or overturns the vow with heve omer. I can understand hana'a zo hafara, that this hana'a that we're talking about refers to the overturning of the vow, the annulment of the vow. Upshuto, and the simple understanding of this word is lashon meni'ah. It has to do with some kind of prevention, v'hasara, and removal. In other words, he's preventing her from being able to make this vow, and he is removing it. V'chein, and we have some examples of this word lahani. This is what Rashi's focusing on. So in Numbers 32, it says, Velama tani'un. So this has to do with the tribes that wanted to take their possession on the east side of the Jordan. And it says, why do you prevent them? And likewise in Psalms 141, Shemen Rosh al Yani Roshi. So this is this verb, again, it doesn't look like it, but it's got to do with the fact that the Aleph and the Yud are interchangeable, and the Hey is also a weak letter, you might say. So it says, may my head not withhold or not prevent shemen, oil, in other words, the honor that will come on me. Okay, so may my head not withhold itself from the oil of a commitment or when you're so for example, when you anoint someone, you commission someone to do something like that. And likewise, B'midbar Yudalin in Numbers 14, V'yadatim et tnuati. This is in a way, this is tnuotai. This is in a way, I think, a euphemism. Okay, and it says, and you shall be aware, as I understand from the translation of it. Okay, you will know how you rejected me, you prevented me. This is God speaking. Et asher sar, and he explains, et asher sartem me'alai. It's meaning the way you turned away from me, from following me. So here we go. Now, v'Hashem yislach la, and Hashem will forgive her. Bameh hakatuv medaber. What is Scripture speaking about? Be'isha, referring to a woman. Shenadra benazir. She made a vow to become a Nazirite. Okay, now a Nazirite, of course, you know, perhaps from other reading, we didn't actually talk about this, but a Nazirite is forbidden to have any grape product, any intoxicant, is not allowed to shave their head, and isn't allowed to come in contact with the dead. Okay, so she made this vow. V'shama ba'ala, her husband heard her make this vow. V'hefarla, and he annulled this. V'hi lo yad'a, but she didn't know. So she's not aware that he has just annulled this vow. V'overet al nidara, and it winds up that she transgresses this vow. V'shota yayin, and she drinks wine. Or she possibly becomes impure on account of contact with a corpse. Zohi, this is the one, shetzricha slicha, that is going to require divine forgiveness. V'afal pi shahu mufar, and despite the fact that this vow is no longer effective, v'im hamufarim tzrichim tzricha. And if in a case of a vow that's been annulled, one requires forgiveness, kal vachomer l'she'enan mufarim. What about those vows that we don't fulfill, that were not annulled? So this is sort of trying to say that taking from what's being said here and from understanding the circumstance, just how serious it is when you make a vow and then you contravene it, that it's really something very serious. Any comments at this point? Okay, I will continue. V'im hayoti ish, and if she, in other words, essentially becomes married. Okay, if she marries a man, unidareha aleha, and her vows are upon her, or miftas fateha, or the expression of her lips, asher asra al nafsha, which when she made a commitment. Okay, let's see what we are here. Let's see what Rashi has to say here. V'im hayor tieh la'ish, if she becomes attached to a man. Zo arusa. So now this is talking about a woman who is betrothed. She's not married yet, but she is betrothed to a man. Or, so then he says, or Eino Ella Nisua. Well, but wait a second, it's not so clear. Maybe it means perhaps that she is actually married. Keshehu Omer Ve'im Beit Isha Nadara, when scripture later on says, and if she makes this vow in her husband's house, Hare Nesua Amara. There, without any question, we're talking about a woman who's married. The Khan Ba'arisa. So we have these three circumstances. We just had the first one where she is a Na'ara in her father's home. And we are now we know about two others, and there are two other cases. One is if she's betrothed, one is she's fully married. So we have three cases mentioned in the Torah. So Rashi just said that third case, without doubt, refers to marriage. So this has to mean betrothed. Uva lachalokba, and it comes to make a distinction in these cases. Sha'aviha uvahala, because in this particular case, both her father and her husband, mafirin nidareha, now what it appears to mean is they are able to annul her vows. How fair, but here he now explains it, right? Because does it mean that they both have to do it? Does it mean either one can do it? Rashi's going to explain. Hafer ha'av velo hefar haba'al. Suppose her father annuls the vow, but her husband doesn't annul the vow. O hafar haba'al velo hafar ha'av. Or her husband annulled and her father didn't. Hare ze eno mufar. The vow is not considered annulled. They both have to do it. Both the father and the husband have to both annul the vow for it to remain standing. The ein tzarich lomar im kiyem echad mehem. And one doesn't have to mention that if one of them actually vets one of those vows, vets a vow, then it stands. Okay. Unidareha leha. So here we go. While her vow is upon her, shenadra bevet avia. This is saying that she took the vow while she was still in her father's house. Velo shama bahen avia. Okay, and her father did not hear what she had said, this vow. Velo hufru, velo hukamu. In that case, they weren't annulled, but they were not at that point established. So what it's sounding like is if she's betrothed, she's not in her husband's home yet because she's not married. She made the vow while she was in her father's house. He didn't take any stand on it whatsoever, okay? Then that it remains in limbo until both her husband or her future husband and her father take a stand on it, on this vow. Okay, let's see. So let me make sure I've got the right place here. So we just were reading above the situation of she im hayotiela ish, right? And we defined what that meant and said that means if she's betrothed. And v'shama isha b'yom shamo v'hichrishla. It says, and her husband heard on the day he heard it, v'hecharishla, and remained silent. V'kamu nidareha v'esareha. And so again, her vows and her commitments will be established. Asher asra al nafsha yakubu. They will be established. So here we go. V'shama isha v'gomer. We'll just take this one more, and then that'll be it for today. And her husband heard it. Let's see where we are now. Harei lecha. So this makes it clear to you, she'im kiyem habal, that if her husband, in fact, established her vow, shehu kayam, it is going to be established. I think this is a good place to stop, and I'll make in the mark here. And that's where I'm going to stop the share. And if you have any comments at all at this point before we need to start davening. Any thoughts?
Usually a Nazirite vow is only for a period of time, though, correct?
It's I think it's a minimum of 30 days.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, it's a minimum of 30 days. Yeah. Okay. We will thank those who are joining us on the recording, and Yom Tov.